Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Permaselect episode, and in this video, this is going to kind of be a continuation of the client editable restaurant menu, which should be the previous video. If you haven't seen that, go ahead and check that out because I'm going to move a little bit quickly in this early part, not going to set up the Oxygen template that you see up here to render the header and the footer or the inner content, but I am going to walk through how to set up this menu here so that you have this popular badge and then little tags like gluten-free, or you can have on sale, you can have a description for a menu item sort of in more detail, and then also a section description if you need to have something like, what each item comes with in this particular section. So this takes the menu a little bit further than what we had set up in the previous video. These questions came from Bob Randclev, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, and then Andrew McKim, again, sorry if I'm saying your names wrong, but you guys asked two great questions, which was, basically how to set up this, little tag like gluten-free or, new item on sale, something to that effect. And then Bob asked, how do you have a little badge like popular or something like that? So what we're going to do is configure all these options using ACF inside of Oxygen. ACF is Advanced Custom Fields, and this is all going to be in our repeater element inside of Oxygen, so that way your client can edit things on the back end, and you don't have to go through and make the changes on the front end whenever the client decides that they want to change an item or change a section. You only have to set the template up once, and then it basically repeats everything out for you. So what we're going to do is go ahead and close out of this screen here and move over to our new development site. So basically at this point, the only thing that I have done is created a field group called Burger Menu. And then inside of this, what I've done is just create our repeater field here. And then I only have the name, the description, and the item price. Now you can go, sort of as in depth as you want with this. The two examples that we're going to do are whether or not the item is featured, and then also whether or not it's gluten-free. So what we can do here is go ahead and add another field to our repeater. And you'll notice that this is a repeater, first of all, of course, because I have the field type set to repeater, but also it puts your options here inside of this subfield section. So just make sure you choose repeater, and if you still have questions, go back to the previous video, and that will kind of cover this in more detail. Go ahead and click on Add Field and call this featured item ? Or whatever you want to call it, and then under the field type, what we're going to do is change that to radio button, and then you'll see this new option appear here called choices. What I like to do is make the first option no, and then the second option yes, so it sort of forces that no option to be chosen. And then because of the fact that we want to make sure to force a choice here, let's go ahead and click on required and change that to yes. And then we're going to add one more field. Again, this can be a radio option. This one is going to be gluten-free ? And then the radio option, once again, is just going to be no, and yes. All right, so then just scroll back up to the top and click on Update. And then what we're going to do is go to our menu page here. And what you'll notice is that in And then what you'll notice is all the options that we just created are here. We can go ahead and start adding some items. So let's call this one, bacon cheese burger. The reason why I'm using burgers as the example is because that's what Bob's screenshot showed, was just what some of the menu options were at this real restaurant. So that's just what I have on my mind is cheeseburgers. So I'm going to leave this description blank for the sake of example. Let's make this burger price $9. This one is not a featured item, and it is not gluten-free. Let's go, black bean burger. This one is vegan friendly, and kind to the polar bears. This burger price is going to be $13. It is a featured item, and actually let's leave this not as a featured item, but it is gluten-free. This next one, let's do a double cheeseburger with bacon, and then we'll leave the description blank. That's pretty self-explanatory. Let's call this one $12. This one is a featured item, and of course it is certainly not gluten-free. Let's add one more option here, and let's just say, add jalapenos, and then add jalapenos to any item, and then we'll say it's plus $3. Maybe we'll do it like that, plus $3. And then featured item, no, gluten-free. I don't know if jalapenos are actually gluten-free, but I'm assuming they are, so let's just say yes. And then we can go ahead and click on update. Now, there's one more thing that you might be curious about, which is how do I add a section description? So what I would do is if you have something like you want to say, all burgers include French fries, or they all come with lettuce, tomato, pickles, onions, whatever, we can actually go back to our custom fields groups and then go inside your menu item here. I would have these segmented out as the type. So maybe breakfast, lunch, dinner, burgers, steaks, whatever, salads, and then click on edit. Instead of editing this repeater item here, what I would do is add a new field, and then I would just call this, like section description, something like that. And then you can either keep this as a text or text area. It really doesn't make a difference. The text is going to be totally fine. So then now what we'll have when we click on update is we have our burger, items in our repeater field, and then we have our section description. So then you would basically just duplicate this layout for each kind of area of your menu. So if you have, like I said, lunch, breakfast, dinner, if you have salads, steaks, whatever, I would personally do it this way. So it sort of keeps everything nice and segmented out. And then it's going to make it extremely simple for the client, because if you add in, let's just say, I'm going to duplicate this. And then if we go refresh our menu over here, then what you're going to see is you have your burger menu, and this is, you're able to expand and collapse this. And then you have this other duplicate one. So if you had this one say lunch, it would say lunch menu copy, breakfast menu, and then you have your section description. So if you hide that, then you can see your menu items and the section description is hidden. So I think I would do it that way. In our section description here for our burger items, let's put this as something like includes pickles, tomatoes, and mayo, something like that. Once again, let's just click on update. And then I'm actually going to go back to our field groups here and just delete that duplicate that we made for the sake of clarity. And then now let's go ahead and edit our page with Oxygen. So of course we have our featured items and our gluten-free. So we're going to set up this repeater to include all this data, and then we're also going to work through the conditions in Oxygen to show or hide things based on whether they're featured or gluten-free. So let's click on edit. Okay, so let's start off by adding in a section and then a heading, and we're going to call this all the burgers. And then we'll add some margin underneath that. 25 pixels is fine. And then let's go ahead and add in our ACF Repeater, which is under helpers. Go to query and then just click on use ACF Repeater. The only repeater we have in this particular example is our burger items, and you can click apply query parameters, and then you can see there's nothing there, but we can start building out the data, so that's totally fine. Go ahead and click on this first div, and we'll start getting this data in here so you can sort of see what we're going to work with. Go to add, and let's add in a heading. This one, once it reloads, go to insert data, repeater field, and then the burger name, insert, and then there you have it. There is the title of our menu item right there in this div. So of course this doesn't look quite right, but what we're going to do is continue adding in the data so we can start kind of formatting everything. What I'm going to do here is add in a text element, and then let's go ahead and add in this insert data, repeater field, and then let's go to gluten-free ? And insert that. And then we can see that it says gluten-free is no. Now, of course, that's not clear at all as to what that is. No, yes, no, yes. So what we can do is actually just double click on this, and then you can just type the words gluten-free, and then you can put colon, space, and there you go. So gluten-free, yes, no, yes, no. Another option is that you can actually hide this based on whether or not the answer is no or yes. So let's do that. I only want the gluten-free text to show up if it's actually gluten-free. If it's gluten-free equals yes. So click on this text element here, and we can go to conditions, set condition, add, and then we're going to go to dynamic data, and then repeater field, and gluten-free. Insert is equal to, and then you have to make sure that this is case sensitive. So because I had a capital Y, I'm putting capital Y for yes. Just close that, and then click on save. And it's not going to display on the front, on the back end, but if we go to the front end here, then you can see it only shows our gluten-free option when it is yes. So I think it probably looks better that way because I don't really care if it's gluten-free, if it's not actually gluten-free. So that's probably something good to put in there. So that shows the power of the conditions, but we're going to get into more of that as well with the badge for popular or something like that. So taking this a little bit further, we have a bit more data to add in here. So let's go another text element, and this one is going to contain our price. So insert data, repeater field, field price, insert, and there's our price for us. We're going to do one more text element, and that one's going to be our item description. Go to insert data, repeater, and then burger description, insert, and there we go. So as you can see, when you have no data, it's probably best to put the condition is not blank. So let's go ahead and do that. Click on your text element here, condition, set, add new, and then choose condition dynamic data, repeater field, the burger description, insert, and then you want to choose is not blank, and then you can just leave that empty. So then what it's going to do is it's going to hide that box if there is nothing in the description field. So what that's going to give you is, it's very advantageous for the sake of kind of formatting and spacing. So you can see that if we left that condition off, then because this item has a description and this one down here does not, you would have an extra white space between that $12 and the word add here. And just for the sake of example, I can actually go through and delete that condition for you just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So take note again that there's no space between this right here, but if I refresh, then there it is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. See how there's that extra white space? Thanks to the condition that kind of removes that space for us, which will be good when we kind of format our menu items here to look a bit better in just a moment. So going back, I'm just going to re-add this condition really quickly, and dynamic data, repeater field, description is not blank, and save, and there we go. Okay, so we have our menu item, we have our gluten-free tag, we have our price, and our item description. The only other thing that we're really missing is the section description. And I think the way that I probably would do this is just add in a text element, make sure it's not inside of your repeater block, double check in our structure panel, and it's not. Let's add some margin underneath our structure panel, and then we'll just insert data, advanced custom field, and section description. Insert. And then you can see includes pickles, tomatoes, and mayo, which is exactly what we put in the burgers section description. So that is definitely how I would do that. Okay, so moving along, we're going to get into the popular badge, the featured item badge. So a couple of things I'm going to do here. First of all, let's open the structure panel. And just like our example earlier, I only want the title and the little tag gluten-free to be on the left-hand side of the page. I want our description to be over to the right, and then I want our price to be over to the right, and then our item description here can be below the gluten-free tag. So let's do this. Let's click on our heading here, go to wrap with div, take your text here, just drag it into that same div, and then let's take this text element here, which is our description, and we can also put it inside that same div. Go ahead and select this div here that contains your title, and go ahead and select the div above the one that contains your title, this kind of master div here, and choose Stack Child Elements horizontally. Let's go to Align Middle and Space Between. And then in case you have a really long description, what I would do is select this div that contains your heading and the other text elements and set the width to something like 50% so that then the text wraps properly. I definitely want to make this price a bit bigger. Let's make it maybe 25 pixels. That looks fine. Maybe increase the font weight a bit. And then I'm going to click on this div here that contains all my elements and add some padding inside of it, make it look a little bit more clean. Let's add some box shadow. So we'll just go 0, 4, 10, -5. We'll change our shadow color to about a 50% opacity. Let's go back to borders and we'll change the border radius to something like 25. And then let's change the background color of these divs to white. And then that way we can add a little bit of delineation between our menu items here by changing our background color to something like an off-white color. Of course, you wouldn't really want these divs to be touching, so just go ahead and click on your main div up here and add in some spacing of, I don't know, maybe 15 pixels, 25 pixels, something like that. So there you go. That looks, roughly okay. It doesn't really look like the greatest menu ever, but you can see it's definitely starting to come together. This heading down here looks a little wonky. Maybe it's because of our spacing that we chose. If I remove that, that's fine. I'm just worried the text is going to wrap really oddly. So maybe keep the spacing as 50%, and then let's change the typography to align left. Yeah, that pretty much fixes it. That's totally fine. Okay, so let's save and take a look on the front end. So now our formatting looks a lot more clean. And because we have the condition applied to this description, this is where you can kind of see there's not that extra white space below the word bacon in this particular menu item. So now let's go ahead and add in our popular featured item kind of badge. So what we're going to do here is click on our main div and then add in another div, and this one we're actually going to want to put above this one with our heading inside of it. So let's put that up there, and actually now that I say this, I think we're going to have to take this another step further, and we're going to have to wrap this div with another div, and then we're going to have to take our pricing text and put it inside of that div here. This div that we just created, let's make this one a width of 100%. And then let's make it stack child elements horizontally once again, middle and space between. And then this div with our heading and stuff should still be contained at 50% width. So now what we can do is go back up to our main div, our main repeater div, and set this to stack child elements vertically. Let's go ahead and remove the left align and the space between, and let's set this div's width to something like 100%. So now what we can do is add in a new text element here. And maybe let's just do a text element. And we're just gonna call this one a featured item for the sake of clarity. I'm gonna make this text a little bit larger, maybe like 20, no, that's a little bit too big. Maybe like 20 pixels, something like that. Let's go ahead and center this. And then I'm gonna set this div's background to kind of the same sort of like winery color from our oxygen template here. And then let's change this text color to white. I want to add in some spacing. Maybe let's go like 15 pixels on the top and bottom. And then on our example, we had this badge stretched to the edge of our div and then have the same kind of border radius as well. So let's fix that. We're going to change this div to have no padding on the left and right. And actually, we'll have no padding on the top and bottom. And then what we can do is select our main div here. We can add that padding back to this div so that there's still that nice spacing. And then I'm going to set the border radius of this, the top left, top right to 25, just like we had. And now you can see our menu here starting to look like our example at the start of this video. So now the next thing we need to do is set our condition on this featured item badge, because right now if we go back to the front end, all of them display the featured item badge, of course, because we haven't configured whether or not it needs to show or hide. So go ahead and click on this div here, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click on the set conditions feature. Set condition, add, choose condition, dynamic data, repeater field, featured item is equal to yes. Once again, really simple. Just close that out, save, and then refresh on the front end. And what you'll see is only the items that we chose to have the featured item badge show up. And of course that is correct. The only one that we chose to have the featured item is our double cheeseburger with bacon. So as you can see, that's extremely easy to configure. It took us about 5 minutes to create the custom field and then choose the condition in the back end. We do have some wonky spacing here, and it's probably because of the way that I had to kind of stack these divs. So I'm going to remove that spacing out of the bottom, save this, and let's refresh it again. And that looks, pretty much how we want it. So again, because we set these descriptions and the gluten-free tag here to not show up unless there's something in the field, that makes it so that our spacing here, like for the bacon cheeseburger, is super simple and easy to line up. And then the same thing is true. If our item is not featured, the featured item badge is not going to appear. Now, let me just touch on something that you might be wondering, which is, the flexibility of where can I put this featured item badge? And because of the way that these conditions work, of course, I created a div up here and kind of put it on top of our actual, menu item data. And I couldn't find a way to sort of wrap the color all the way around because I had to set the condition to show, yes or no, basically hide it if it's not a featured item, which in turn hid everything kind of in here. So I think just, maybe play with this a little bit, but I think having the featured item badge at the top, maybe you could have it as, just a simple text element under the words, something to that effect. So, there's a lot of flexibility here. here, but in the case of the example that you sent me, Bob, with that whole like main border color, couldn't quite figure that out. But hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how to utilize the ACF repeater in combination with the oxygen conditions and make, you know, a really usable menu. Of course, in terms of styling, this doesn't look all that great, but that's not the point of this tutorial. It's basically just to show you the power of the ACF repeater field, oxygen, and its conditions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions or comments, definitely let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in a future video.